book came about because I have been unsettled and I am usually quite annoyed, quite frankly, with people parading ideas which have no background, no substance, no justification, no defense.
What if writing a book is not just a way to transform the lives of many people, but also a way to create financial freedom and leave a legacy? Wouldn't you want to find out just how to do that? Well, that's what this show is all about.
Hi, I'm Hennika Watkis, Porter speaker, coach, author of Podcast Power, and the host of the Entrepreneurial You podcast, inviting you to listen to the Authorpreneur Secrets podcast, brought to you by C. Ruth Taylor, best-selling indie author and the Caribbean's most trusted voice on entrepreneurship. Tune in for inspiration, information, and innovation to write and win with books. Get ready to dominate entrepreneurship.
Today we have with us Reverend Dr. Clinton Chisholm, a retired Jamaican Baptist Union ordained pastor. Most of his working life has been in education as tutor and lecturer in music, Greek, Hebrew, philosophy, business ethics, apologetics, and hermeneutics. He has taught in several universities and recently served as academic dean of the Caribbean Graduate School of Theology. In 2005, he was awarded the Honorary Doctor of Divinity degree, D.D., by the Caribbean Graduate School of Theology in Jamaica, where he served as a guest lecturer since 1993. He has produced 25 educational audio media, the latest being Homosexuality, Clinical and Biblical Perspectives, Afrocentrism and Black Consciousness, Challenges for Christianity, and the Church's Impact on Western Civilization. He has written 4 books: A Matter of Principle, Revelations on Ras Tafari, Youth Discipleship, and A Controversial Clergyman. Join us in welcoming Dr. Clinton Chisholm.
All right, send up some hearts and make welcome our special guest for today. Dr. Chisholm, it's a pleasure to have you here.
My joy and honor. Thanks for inviting me.
All right, so you have written 4 books. You are one of the Caribbean's foremost apologists.
I take that by faith.
Yes, and we are just honored to have you. And you're such a humble man. Working with you has been a pleasure. So tell us a little bit about your author journey. Why did you write, starting with the first book, and just give us a little tale leading up. Not every detail, but for those who want to write, and we find that the stories help. Let's start with the first book. How did that come about?
The first book came about because I have been unsettled and I am usually quite annoyed, quite frankly, with people parading ideas which have no background, no substance, no justification, no defense. And I grew up in an era in Montego Bay, in Western Jamaica, where people were talking about Haile Selassie as being the 225th from the Queen of Sheba and Solomon of Israel. And I heard it so long, for so many years. You know, people say it nicely, profoundly, as if they know what they're talking about. When I start to ask the question, now, where's the evidence? You get, well, naturally, you see, nothing sensible comes. So I decided to say, let me just check out this thing. Checked it out and found that it was found wanting. I did some ground research with a white friend of mine from America, Bill Spencer. We went on field trips in Jamaica with Dr. Nuris's wife, exploring the issues. And I said, look, I'm going to document this thing. And so I started with that book. But the book really came out of some talks I gave, some short talks I gave on, I think it was then called KLS Radio. The door was opened by my friend Billy Hall, who taught me missions and journalism at JTS. Short 5-minute commentaries on anything on KLS. And after doing that for about a year or two, you know, Billy said, Clinton, put them together in book form. So I did that. And that was the first book, A Matter of Principle, 1997. And I did some more commentaries. And did a revised version 2003. So that was a later version of the same book. That book was self-published, as they call it then, you know. In fact, the first one didn't have any ISBN number. And a lecturer of mine at UTC said, Clinton, you know, somebody can just take your book, get an ISBN number, and you're dead in the water.
True.
You can't publish anything without getting an ISBN number for it. And so I learned the second book had the ISBN.
That's interesting.
It was my passion for truth, not things parading as truth, but lacking foundation. And I'm still quite fussy about that.
Awesome. So what we're getting there, we've just gotten a little nugget to write a book. So sometimes persons ask, what do I do? What do I turn into a book? So here it was, he had a concern for truth and logic and all of that stuff, but he was giving these little sermonettes, and then he compiled them into a book. And we want it, one of the things that we're seeing from all the speakers is that they were encouraged to write. They didn't think about it. Somebody encouraged them. So if we're going to raise up 10,000 authorpreneurs, and you have to become an author first, by 2030, we need a snowball effect of persons who will encourage even 10 persons to write. So that was the first book. Was that a matter of principle or Rasta?
No, a matter of principle, actually, was the first book.
Okay. And the second book was?
Revelations on Ras Tafari, 2 separate words. Ras is a title, Tafari was his family name.
Okay, so tell us how did that one come about?
That one came about, as I said earlier, I kind of got mixed up a little bit. Came out of the allegations that I've heard for years that His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie was literal descendant of the Queen of Sheba and King Solomon of Israel.
Okay.
When I checked it out, nobody could give me any sources that they used to prove that. So I started to do the research myself to check it out and found that there was no basis for that claim. It's just an empty claim, a baseless, empty claim.
Wow.
There's no historical connection between Selassie and Solomon and the Queen of Sheba.
Okay. And then the latest book, although you have one that I'm interested in, The Lord's Day, Sabbath or Sunday?
No, that's not my production.
Oh, wow, so I'm promoting.
I have a CD on that, the
Okay.
Sabbath versus Sunday debate, and a DVD where Ian Bourne and I discuss the issue of the Sabbath.
Okay,
But
all
I
right.
didn't write that book, The Lord.
Your latest book, A Controversial Clergyman, how did that one come about?
That came about after years I've been writing the occasional, contributed. They don't pay you anything. They say they're giving you publicity as if you can take that from Minimart. So the Gleaner and the Observer would get my columns, and they would, if they have space, they would publish you. If they don't have space and they don't think the topic is important enough for them, then you're dead in the water. I actually remember once I sent a submission to the Gleaner, and 1 year and a day later, I am not making this up, it was published. 1 year and a day later. So I watched it and said, I thought the guys had dumped this thing, but the topic was still a kind of a perennially recurring thing, so it was still germane. But that's how they do it. So I sent contributed columns or articles to the newspapers, and then I say, let me collect some of my best works for this book, A Controversial Clergyman. And people regard me as controversial because I don't take the traditional views on many things. So, and I do awkward things in the pulpit. I will have, after every sermon, unless it's a very busy Sunday, I open for questions. And that got people annoyed when I tried it first at my pastorate in Filippo in Spanish Town. They got annoyed that it's an intrusion in worship, but tell me now back off, so they better get accustomed to it. And after a while, they got accustomed to it, because what he did, it woke up the congregation.
Yes.
You could be sleeping on me with your eyes wide open. I don't know. So only when I give you the opportunity to ask me questions, and I told him I reserve the right to ask anybody in the congregation questions.
Yes.
I qualify the color of your jacket, your blouse, your shirt, your hat, or your whatever. And if you were sleeping, then sorry for you, you saw it. So they got accustomed to it. So they keep alert. And then the young people especially gravitated to it because it gave them a chance in church, maybe for the first time at last, to question Parson. Parson is not God. Parson is not the fourth member of the Trinity. Parson can make mistakes. So question Parson. The average pastor does not like that because they think you're what they call it, the passage that they usually take out of context, touch not the Lord's anointed. Or asking your question touch you, whether you think you're anointed or you're not anointed. It doesn't matter seriously. Answer my question if you can, or tell me you'll find an answer and come back to me. So they got accustomed to that. I do it as a guest preacher, and once on the morning I was doing this as a guest preacher in Florida, South Florida. And of course, I don't talk long either. I'm a short-winded Baptist preacher, so that is annoying to many people. And so I was doing this as a guest in a church, and at the end of the question and answer time, the pastor came and said, "You guys enjoyed that?" And there's a resounding yes. And you would like him to come back next week? Yes, not going to happen. And by the way, don't expect to ask me any questions beyond today. So like the first and the last, but declare bad. You can ask Chisholm questions because he probably fool and will accommodate that. Not happening with me. I had a good little laugh on the platform to myself about that.
Awesome. All right. Tell us a little bit about your writing process itself. What do you do when you're writing books? For some of these, you obviously had to gather the information, but give us some of the technicalities. Like we know Paul wants to write a book, maybe.
Well, this morning,
so
for instance, last night an idea hit me. You know, I said, I am tired of people attacking the church and some of them don't do any homework. So like a guy, Ricardo Mackenzie, I remember his name, an open letter to the Prime Minister of Jamaica came out, I think, about a week and a half ago, saying that the church is on the wrong side of history, and his approach saying that the church can help to curb violent youth is a waste of time because, listen to him, I have still to find one aspect in history where the church has been on the right side. I said, this guy has got to be kidding. So that very night, even though I was harassed by preparing, on last minute I was asked to teach a course at JTS, which begins tonight actually. I said, no, I have to answer him. This is an idiot who needs to know that he's a fool, he does not know enough, and he should keep his stupid mouth shut. So I did a piece titled The Church's Positive Impact on Western Civilization. That's just drawn from my CD, The Church's Impact on Western Civilization. I sent it to the Observer that very night. Up to now, they have not published it. And I did the awkward thing yesterday. I wrote the editor to whom I usually send some submissions, and I said, I know it is awkward, but are you planning to publish my response to Ricardo Mackenzie? I haven't heard back from him yet. So something will come, trouble my spirit, because I need to clarify somebody who's off the wagon in terms of truth and information. So I would submit an article. If it is published, it's published. If it is not, I keep it in my file still. So I collected the things that were published in the Gleaner and the Observer for my latest book, A Controversial Clergyman. But there are things that I submitted to them which they have never published, which I still have. And I'm toying with for calling my next book, maybe, tentatively, I'm not sure if that will come Rapture at all, for the record, unpublished pieces.
I like it, for the record.
Yeah,
for the record. So
there was a newspaper in Jamaica years ago called The Record. I wrote for them. I was a bi-weekly columnist for them. And then it just dropped off the map. Went over.
Right. So if you are a newspaper columnist, you can turn those into a book. But what I'm looking for is, all right, do you write on your phone? Do you write on your laptop? When you get in that zone, where do you go to write? I'm looking more of the nitty-gritty. What do you do? Do you grab a pen and a paper and you just start? How does it work for you, Doc?
I get an idea. And whatever I would, like last night, I was tidying up my syllabus. I just pulled a little notebook beside me and just put down the topic of the article. And so that last night, later on this morning, early, I would do some more work on it. I'm still going to fine tune this one, you know. So I would jot down a tentative title, basic idea, the skeleton of what I would want to explore, do my research, check some books that I have. I sold my library before I left Jamaica, but I took one or two prized ones which I would not part with for life nor for money. And so I checked one called The 6 Modern Myths About Christianity and Western Civilization, from which I was pulling some material. Then this morning early, I got up, not as early as I used to get up. I'm an older man now, I sleep with luxury and leisure and get up when my body says you can leave the bed now. So I went back to that this morning. So jot down the germinal idea, do the background research, flesh it out, and I proofread as well as I can, because you can't afford to make a blunder as a writer, whether in the public press or in a little newspaper or a magazine or whatever. My integrity is too prized for me to allow a blunder. So I proofread as much as I can. Sometime when I'm able, I send it to a family member or a friend to say, just look this over, see if you see any obvious blunders or errors or poor argumentation, and then send it back to me so I can tidy it up.
So what I'm hearing is that you're constantly jotting down ideas and listening for things.
Right.
So yesterday, one of our speakers, Hillette, she was saying that you always have to be reading, that aspiring authors need to read. You're saying too, you need to write and capture ideas.
Yes.
And do your best to proof it well.
Right.
And I think some of the aspiring authors that I've become familiar with, because I was actively publishing, they just send the manuscript to you like the first draft. And they don't take any time to proofread that properly. I want to say to you, if you are an aspiring author, learn from Dr. Chisholm. You need to polish that manuscript as best as possible before you send it to a publisher or an editor. So it's not just the editor's job to fix everything. You must fix it as best as possible. You get one or two persons to just do a little proofreading for you to see, as he said, is the argumentation correct? For you, it may not be that kind of book, but you want to know, is it structured properly? Does it make sense? And many authors struggle with self-doubt. And so that kind of validation is what you need. Does this make sense? Should I go back to the table? Long before you pass it on to a publisher, with a traditional or a publishing house that you're going to pay them to do it. So thank you for revealing that process. All right. So
sorry,
go ahead.
If I may, Amika, a little thing. Those who I'm not tech savvy. My daughter and son-in-law are working slowly with me. I learn technology slowly because I'm impatient with it. If it's not happening very quickly, kind of get fed up and want to leave it. People who are more tech savvy, you can buy a little micro cassette recorder and always have that with you. An idea comes to you, just record yourself on it. You know, think about, and you're speaking to it, then you can go back, listen to it, then do your research. For me, not very tech savvy, I would just jot down. I used to have a micro cassette recorder. I lent it to somebody and didn't get it back. Something with you to get your ideas recorded, either written or on a machine where you record it.
And you can use your phone to do that. So has recording features, so you can just go into the voice recorder, and the idea comes, you just jot it down, and that is how I've gotten the content for some of my books.
Yes, right.
Right on the phone, like Jenna did. I've done that. You could speak your book using the phone. The phone has a speech to text device these days, or apps that you can download. So while you are talking, it is writing and recording at the same time, and you can get that cleaned up rather quickly. So the whole transcription there. So when you wrote your book, how did it feel? What was the most rewarding part of that?
Well, there's an interesting one about the Revelations on Ras Tafari one, because the nugget thoughts that came out in book form, I had been parading on an audio cassette that I had in cassette days, you know. And my wife said to me, you know, Clinton, you're going dilly-dally about this thing till somebody steal the ideas and publish before you. So I said, you know, you're right. So I sat down laboriously on that in 2008. I finalized the book. And I attributed it to her because it was her inspiration and, you know, kind of nudging me to document the thing before somebody beat me to it. So sometimes you might lag, whether it was self-doubt or just plain laziness, I really don't know. But I know it took too long to get that out in book form. And I've been challenging Rasta, as I say, guys, you don't agree with me, but tackle me. Prove me wrong on anything in my book. You prove me wrong, factually or logically, historically or whatever. Prove me wrong. Some have tried, but they've all failed.
Okay, so what did it feel like when you got that book in your hand, holding the book?
No, it felt like, you know, joy unspeakable, but short of full of glory. Because you say, all right, finally, this is like reward for my labor. You feel good, you know. when that happens. But as my friend Billy Hall told me quite lovingly, he's my dear friend, but my worst critic at once, he says, Clinton, writing a book in the Caribbean is an exercise in vanity. It might be an exaggeration, but it's not far off from the truth. You find money to write, you research, you publish a book, and very few people buy it in the Caribbean because we are not known to be readers yet. I hope that is changing slowly but surely. But it's a good feeling, whether anybody read a book or not, that you have a book out. Some people just may stumble on it and read it and like it.
And do you still get that same feeling with every book, or it was just the first one? You know, like when you're having the first child, they throw this big shower, and by the time you have the fifth child, nobody even remembers that you're having a child.
You have no
Does that happen with the books?
Yeah. It happens. I can't say with mine because the first book, the impetus for it was, okay, these are ideas. When I was recording, by the way, at KLA's, Wilmot Perkins would usually be in studio waiting to go on to his radio program. And he and I developed a good relationship. He didn't always agree with me. He didn't agree with me much of the time, but he would tell me what he comments and what he thought I could have dolled up a little bit. So the impetus was to get these ideas commented by a person whose brain I respect. Wilmot Perkins was how a brain ought to work, in my view. I would listen to the news, and then I say, all right, when Perkins comes on, let's hear the other side of the news. My wife and I look forward to that every single morning on RJR. So the impetus was there for that one. The second one, of course, I had that long-held impetus to correct the false views, in my view, of Ras Tafari brethren and their sympathizers. The third one was a needed one.
Discipleship.
Yeah, youth discipleship, because youngsters were having problems. And I maintain that is the rare person in the Caribbean, or anywhere for that matter, who can truly claim that they got saved at age 4 and 5. I rubbish that as nonsense in a Christian education class at JTS. And then a New Testament Church of God friend of mine stretched her hand across the room and said, come out of him! He rebuked devil out of here. Because they thought I was just outrageous. But I stood my ground, and I told the lecturers, I don't believe that the average child has a clue about good and bad, right and wrong, violating God's law, to be saved in the genuine sense. Usually you're religious and your parents have inculcated certain values in you. And even Bible stories when you hear and songs that you sing in church is when you get older, you understand what they mean. And then they usually come to a genuine faith at a later age, teenage years, maybe mature teenage years or later. But you get saved at 4 or 5. Saved from what? You really don't know what you're saved from. So I still hold that view. My family members of child, my wife and our daughter especially, say no, there are people who have a good awareness of whether they're going contrary to God's rules and regulations or not. Lord, I believe, help though my unbelief. That's just me. I don't think you know enough to know that you're saved. And what are you saved from? What are you saved to? But that's just me, you know.
Yeah, I have a friend. He got saved at 3 years old. Whether he knew fully, but he made a commitment at 3. When he got older, he became a missionary, and he never strayed, and he's still walking that out. Another friend that's 6 years old, it's the same thing. Maybe it's like a Samuel thing. You're not fully conscious of what you're doing, but you have a desire to serve the Lord. And then those around you nurture it. It doesn't, yes. I don't think it diminishes what actually took place, whether you're fully cognizant of it. It's like sometimes getting married, you never know what you're getting into, but you made a decision and then you learn about it afterwards.
Yeah, most decisions I maintain are learned best in retrospect. Looking back, yes, that was God's will. Whether it's a marriage partner or a job or a vocation or an avocation or whatever. But prospectively, we are all in, no man's land kind of a thing. You're not sure, you get a little hunch. I think this may be, but it's best confirmed in retrospect. So maybe there's a little nugget of, being saved in the early years, and it is confirmed and grown into a tree or a mulberry bush or whatever later on in life. But that's just weird.
I love it. I love it.
That's the second book, the third book rather. The final one, no. This, I just wanted to get my ideas out there. Excuse me. But there was a worthy collection of my articles, which were, some people have a problem. They think I'm just a clergy idiot. But I challenge any one of them. Tap me on a debate stage and you see what happened to you. The ideas need to be put in a book form, and then people can wrestle with the book, rubbish it, or wrestle with it and be convinced by the arguments in there. Tonight, God willing, I start teaching a course at JTS. The book is the main text, required text. It's an introduction to critical thinking. So that begins tonight, God willing, at 7.
Awesome! Hold on, Rev. Hold on. You see me smiling from ear to ear.
Yes. And I think I know why.
An introduction. Did they have a course like this before?
They had a course, I think it's generally called, yes, Introduction to Critical Thinking, but it was done differently. But the acting president knows of my book and asked me to work under the umbrella of my dear friend Erica Campbell, who I think taught the course the last time. So I'm giving them my slant on Introduction to Critical Thinking as of tonight.
Awesome. So you see what that is. And can we send up some hearts and applaud? So I think part of that book is what we call legacy. It's part of the legacy journey. You know, in the Caribbean, we say when banana tree, when Marga plant no one dead, it sends up shoot. Or when the banana tree is going to die, it sends up shoot. So you're in retirement. You see a lot of nonsense around the place. You've written articles, but place.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you've done now is to bring everything together in a book that people can find it in one place.
Mm-hmm.
And because you've done that now, you're getting an opportunity to teach others to become like you, to be able to think logically and defend their views. You're raising up critical thinkers. And I don't want us to miss that. That's the power of a book. So the book preserves it. And not only that, you're continuing the legacy of religious leaders in the Bible. Almost every book in the Bible was written by a leading religious figure. Samuel chronicled the stuff that we have it now. Paul wrote the teachings, wrote stuff, and today we have it. So I want to challenge anybody in the audience. If you're 35 and over, if you're 50 and over, if you're in retirement, what wisdom, what lesson, what skills? Are you just gonna die and leave it there? Who is the shoot that is coming up? The book, because the book will give you opportunity to know, to nurture those shoots, so that like when Moses was dying, Joshua was there and he was able to pass on this book, and God says study this book and you're gonna be successful. So look at, you see, when you just focus on book sales, you kind of miss the mark. Allow me to just delve into this a little bit, because you got me stirred up.
No problem.
When all you're doing is focusing on book sales, you're missing the mark. Because look at this. Or if you're saying people now read, so it don't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Readers, those who read, lead.
Yeah, readers are leaders and leaders are readers. Yeah.
And if you get your book in the hands of a few who are leaders and influencers, they will take that message to millions. So you don't need millions to read your book. And so that should stop being your excuse that I'm not going to write because many people are not reading. Write for the readers. Write for the leaders who must read, who will take that message and pass it on. Your book might become a textbook. And so he's creating a greater impact and income. Them going to buy his book. So he's creating an avenue of intentional sales without just putting your book up on Amazon and hoping and wishing that, that people are going to buy it. No, it's part of the course. They have to get it. He's teaching it. So the opportunity for impact, legacy, succession planning, all of these things come with book. That's how we talk about products, programs, services, impact. And the school is going to pay him. So that's double stuff happening.
Not much, mind you, but they will have to.
I love it. How you already have a reputation, so you weren't writing to build your reputation. Since you have written, how has your book helped in your ministry or in your branding? Has it given you more? What has books done for you?
Well, the thing is that it's easier for me now to write on. My last book is quite eclectic. Social concerns, legal concerns, issues pertaining to the society in general, and the miscellaneous last section having to do with public speakers. And as a trained classical singer, there are pointers that in the latter part of the book that would pertain to people who are in the public sphere, managers, executives in terms of pronunciation and so on. So it has opened some little doors. At least people will turn and say, okay, let's check and see what Chisholm's book has on this. You know, that's my hope. But it's easier to, there's hardly a topic that you could challenge the church on which I have not written something about already. Whether you're tackling the language of the text, my specialization is in biblical languages. I'm a trained philosopher. I'm a trained musician. And so you're going to traffic in those areas, then you're going to come up against me. If you tackle the Bible any at all, I'm going to be there. Philosophically, I can answer you. If you go to the language of the Bible, you're in deep waters with me, kind of a thing, you know. So it is easier now. I can piggyback on something that I've already written and twist it a little bit, add to it, and flesh it out for public consumption. In fact, I just took a little delightful tease at the young, gifted, and Black inaugural poetess, Amanda Gorman, because she says she has a speech impediment. My little mischievous thing is that what she says was her speech impediment of dropping, letters like R, the R in her surname, is not a speech impediment, subject to correction by professional speech pathologists. It's a mistaken learned pronunciation that we all had, that every single letter in the English language must be pronounced. Not true at all. There are numerous silent letters, plus the consonant R for singers and for speakers should not be articulated if a consonant follows it. So her surname is Gorman, Gorman. It's really like Gawman, I pointed out in a Facebook post, and I've dolled it up a little bit and sent it to the newspapers as well in Jamaica. So if she was taught the same way most of us were taught, every single letter, so daughter, technically wrong. Daughter, UH. Somebody asked in response to my post, can somebody tell me how to pronounce, and then it spelled out daughter and father and mother. All of the English words ending in ER are pronounced as if they end in UH, R, if you need R for a vowel that follows. And those are the speech dynamics I learned when I was doing singing, to do my L.R.S.M and A.T.C.L in solo singing. So the book is quite eclectic. I know it's a vulgar plug just now, but it's pardonable as a vulgar plug since you have asked me as your guest. So you will learn much more than pronunciation, much more than on societal concerns. And I challenge Minister of Justice Chuck, but saying that the Parliament must take the church to task for its reliance on old teaching. What does the age of a book have to do with anything? Nothing at all. Chuck has said the age of a book has nothing to do with. There are laws that we have in Jamaica now which go back to the laws of Hammurabi in the 1900 BC, for crying out loud. So the age of a law doesn't have anything to do with the validity or durability of the law. Check the content of the law. So a lot of stupidity and illogicality is called the fallacy of habeas, based on the age of the document, either too young or too old. Doesn't have anything to do with it. Examine the content of the law. An 1864 law having to do with abortion being illegal, or a 1900 BC law, is it valuable now as a guide for human conduct? That's a better question to ask. So I chide anybody and everybody. If you're going contrary to logic and fact, and especially if you're tackling the Bible, watch yourself with me. As long as I'm around, I'm going to chide you. I don't care who you are. I'm not scared of anybody intellectually. You might go to a better school, you might be brighter than I am, but I can ask you a hard question, and you might have problems answering that hard question. A fool can ask a sensible person a question which you can't answer, you know. So we can learn from anybody.
Not allowing wisdom to just be with you. You are sharing it, and I appreciate that. Before, the most challenging part of after being published frustrated you, or what was your expectation and then it didn't happen and you were disappointed?
That I still have a question sign about is getting a report. I don't know if I'm to ask for it. Getting a report, how many of my books have been sold through Amazon.
Oh, you just need to go to your KDP dashboard and click reports. They have the report there, and then there's something called historical that you can go and see there. More
important, I don't get no money from them. They don't pay anything as like royalty, even if it's to compensate.
Okay, we have to check there. One of the things is in setting up the account, if you ask to be paid by check, you have to earn at least $100 in royalty before you are paid. right? If you had like an American account where you, or a Pioneer card, because most persons in the Caribbean don't have we can't get paid directly. So you have to get a card that gives you an American bank account. Attach that to Amazon. So when I sell books, if it's one book, I get an immediate payout. Sometimes I will see it coming to my Pioneer card. If you chose the check option, you have to wait until you earn $100. And it will come to you. Then the thing with Amazon has about 8 million books. So books on Amazon, it's like a needle in a haystack. And if you don't send any traffic there, you are not going to sell any books. And you have to invest in ads. And this is part of my push as well, that we do direct sales, or we come up with innovative ways to push it, because we don't have the traditional publishing house. We don't have a company that can print our books, put them in stores, and give us a reasonable deal. So Amazon allows us to, to print at a discounted price. And I'm not able to navigate it. I can set up a session with you, and we can go through, and I can show you how much money you've made and all of that. I haven't made the effort that you put in it, but you gain far more through direct sales when you when you print the book.
And I've sold a few hundred so far in the Caribbean region. Like at a seminar that I'm doing, I would have copies of the books there and so on. But you can't keep doing that because of not only the lack of ability physically, but it takes money, and COVID has put pay to traveling around physically.
And take that virtually. I was on a webinar with Seth Godin, and right there, just like what I did with your book, the host flashed his book across the screen, and immediately someone in the audience just purchased. With ebooks and print books, you have the best of both worlds. So you don't know if in talking here, and we put the link in the chat, while we're talking, can just go directly and click on that and purchase. And so it's not just anymore.
Virtual helps as well.
All right. So
I'm Tamara Francis, educator and editor. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and share the podcast with your network. If you'd like to increase your impact and income with books, visit authorpreneursecrets.com for more resources, including the books Pen It to Win It and Authorpreneur Secrets. Join the Authorpreneur Secrets Academy membership group for courses, coaching, and community support to write, publish, and win with books. Until next time, go pen it to win it.